Welcome to the Feel Your Best Formula podcast. Are you over 40 and tired of struggling with your weight? Do you feel like you're constantly starting over with your nutrition and fitness? I'm Lil, a certified nutrition coach and former registered nurse, and I too have been there. At the age of 44, I decided I was done with being stuck in the vicious diet cycle. I became a nutrition coach and created the Feel Your Best Formula for women who are ready to do things differently. If you're ready to build a better relationship with food, get your energy back, build muscle, lose fat, and keep it off for good, then you're in the right place. I'm so glad you're here. Now let's build your formula for feeling your best. Hello, welcome back to the Feel Your Best Formula podcast. I'm your host, Lilius, and today we are talking about 3 ways to improve your nutrition, but not tracking. And these are strategies that you can use. Number 1, if you are tracking your macros and your calories, but you're ready to level up and really nourish your body even more than you are right now, because just because you're tracking your food doesn't mean that you are necessarily eating a very overall balanced diet. It means that you're hitting your macros and you're staying within your calories, but there could be room for improvement as far as the quality of your food. And also, if you are not someone who's interested in tracking your food, I want you to know that you can absolutely improve your nutrition and improve your relationship with food without necessarily tracking. Now, you still have to be mindful, still have to be intentional, but if you don't want to get into the nitty-gritty of tracking your meals, then these are 3 ways that you can just start to feel better about your food choices, because I know there's so much misinformation, confusing information out there. And that's something that I try to tackle here on this podcast. Number 1, I hope that by now, if you've been listening, you understand there are no good foods and there are no bad foods. There are simply foods that are more nourishing to your body and help you maintain a state of balance and equilibrium in your body, or help you lose weight and create a better metabolic profile for your body. And then there are foods that can definitely be enjoyed in, limited amounts, in mindful amounts. But when you eat those foods, they're not doing anything beneficial other than possibly giving your body some energy and then just making you feel good because it's a comforting food for you. And there's also nothing wrong with that. But we have to have this basic understanding that absolutely there are foods that provide our body with the essential ingredients, if you will, for creating overall health and wellness. And it doesn't mean that it's good or bad. It just means that we want to make sure that we're giving our body those foods and prioritizing those foods ahead of foods that just taste good and are probably very calorie dense, but aren't necessarily doing anything to benefit our overall health and wellness. And even when you're tracking your food, you can get stuck in a place where maybe you're eating all the same foods. If you're fearing being off your plan, or if you feel like it's going to cause you stress to try to balance things with different types of foods, and you're just constantly eating the same exact foods all the time, then that can be a bit of a disordered approach. It can be a little bit of a fearful approach, and it can also limit what types of nutrients your body is receiving on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis. And I personally feel, of course, we have our top 20 foods that we know we want to include in our diet because we enjoy them and they are giving our body the nourishing components that we need. I have a whole episode on how to find your best 20 foods. But on top of that, we want to make sure that we are rotating through different foods and not just relying, on maybe the same exact foods every single week, because we don't want to create gaps in our nutrition. And unfortunately, so many people are eating what's considered, the standard American diet, which is a lot of refined carbs, excess fat, not enough fruits, veggies, and certainly not enough fiber. So, with that being the quote standard, we do have to be intentional and mindful to improve the quality of the foods that we are eating. So that's really the theme of today's episode. It's about improving the quality of the foods that you're eating without tracking, because I'm going to be honest with you. Many years ago, I tried using the MyFitnessPal app, and part of the reason I didn't like it was because it got too nitty gritty. It would tell you on a daily basis, oh, your potassium is red, you didn't eat enough potassium today, or your calcium is green, you ate enough calcium today. And it just got too into the weeds for me. And I didn't like the feeling that I had when I would look at my food log and just see all these reds and greens staring back at me. So I never wanted to be the type of person who tracked micronutrients on that level. And I also don't know how accurate that would truly be, because I'm sure there's such variety. Even if you had kale that was grown in one location versus another, I just feel like it's getting a little too complicated, a little too much into the weeds to actually track it. So I would just prefer to look at things from more of a bird's eye view and just say, hey, am I eating a variety of foods that are going to ensure that there just aren't these gaps in my nutrition? And that is something that, I didn't really think about back in the days when I purely looked at nutrition as either making me fat or making me skinny. It was a very black and white approach. If I eat this food, is it going to make me gain weight? If I eat this food, is it going to make me lose weight? And that was really the only value I saw in food. And now I know there's so much more to it, and I don't think of food that way anymore. I don't think of food as being good or bad. But if you are someone who's listening and you just want to start feeling better about your nutrition and having more confidence about your food choices, and if you're finding yourself reaching for snacks and candy and chips in between meals a lot, I also think that this episode is going to be very helpful with you. So I'm going to share 3 ways that you can easily improve your nutrition without tracking your food. Now, number 1, and I talk about this all the time on here, but I know that I have clients come to me who've been listening to the podcast, and when we get started, and even though you've heard me say this, when we actually start working together, there still is a gap between the understanding and the actual taking action in doing this, which is prioritizing protein. I think a lot of us in our 40s and 50s and beyond have this fear of protein. When we were learning or being force-fed information on dieting, we were told that protein's bad for your kidneys and it's just for the bodybuilders and things like that. And I know I really had to overcome a lot of those thoughts and beliefs before I started actually consuming the amount of protein that my body needs. And I know that when I started eating the right amount of protein, I felt so much better. And so one way you can simply do this is just by making sure you're having protein with every meal and every snack. So instead of just having, toast and coffee or a bagel and in juice for breakfast or whatever you're having, make sure that you're having some source of protein. I'm not talking about having a light and fit yogurt, or things like that. I'm talking about having yogurt, just glance at that label and make sure there's at least like 15 grams of protein in that little container of yogurt. Have at least 3 eggs, have a half cup of cottage cheese. Start learning how you can add protein into your day, starting with breakfast. And then when it comes to lunch, if you're having a salad, make sure there's some chicken or steak or salmon or tuna fish in there. If you're having a wrap, same thing. Make sure that there's some turkey, some tuna, some chicken in that wrap. Tofu, there's so many forms of protein. Edamame, having some black beans, have a burrito, and make sure that it's heavy on the protein and maybe a little bit lighter on the rice. But adding protein into your meals, into your snacks, is going to help you in a lot of ways. The number one feedback that I get from my clients are, number one, increased energy, increased focus, less distraction with thinking of what your next meal is going to be, because you're more full and satisfied with the meals that you're eating. And really less snacking, less reaching for the gummy bears or the M&Ms or the trail mix, and truly being full and satisfied where you're not really thinking about your next meal until it's getting to be close to that meal time. So if you are someone that struggles with constantly thinking about food, constantly feeling like you need to eat something, I totally understand that there are medications out there that can help you with that these days, but have you tried actually just eating 30 grams of protein with your meals? Honestly, it is shocking how helpful this can be. And when you're improving the quality of these meals that you're eating, it really does start with the protein. And you can start feeling better about that meal that you're eating. And also, you're likely going to see a shift in your obsessing over your next meal, being hungry, and reaching for those snacks that might be might have more sugar, might have more fat, and that you're like, oh, I shouldn't have had that. And also start looking for snacks that are, prioritizing protein. The things like having some cottage cheese and fruit, some yogurt with granola, having some hard-boiled eggs, a protein shake. I think a lot of times when we think of a snack, we often think of a carb, and you certainly absolutely can have a carb with the protein, but overall, eating the protein can help you consume less calories because it's going to be more filling and satisfying, and again, give you more time before you're hungry for your next meal. My next piece of advice builds on this, but eating 3 filling meals per day. Now, I spent years thinking that a meal was 250 to 300 calories, and that I should be eating a meal every 2.5 to 3 hours. So I would eat my breakfast around 6 a.m. I would be having another meal around 9:30 or 10 a.m. I would be having my lunch at noon. I would be having another large snacky type meal around 3, and then I would be having my dinner around 5:36, and then sometimes I'd be having another snack. But the problem is all these meals were somewhere between 200 and 300 calories. And even though I might feel full right when I ate it, I had maybe an hour before I would start becoming hungry again. But the nutrition advice I was following, I mistakenly believed them when they said, this is good for your metabolism, this is how you lose weight, yada, yada, yada. And now I understand that that's completely not true. But when you switch to eating 3 large filling meals everything changes. Now, I'll be honest that I do break up my breakfast a little bit on the days that I work out, where I have a small carb before my workout, and then I have my full breakfast afterwards, which is usually yogurt with fruit or granola or a high fiber cereal and a protein shake. That's what I consider my full breakfast, but I do like to have a little pre-workout snack before I do my workout. So otherwise in the day, I eat a large lunch, I eat a large dinner, and very rarely I might have a little something around 3 or 3:30 in the afternoon, but generally speaking, I'm not hungry between meals, especially if, again, I make sure I'm eating enough protein. But you don't have to track your meals to be like this. If you're someone, and I see this all the time, where, let's be honest, there is a fear of being full. There's a fear of, being satisfied. And we associate that feeling with gaining weight. We associate the feeling of being a little bit hungry and lighter and not that full feeling. We associate that with being good, being on a diet, because that's how you feel on a diet. But the problem is that when you're constantly living in that space of restriction and not allowing yourself to be full and satisfied, then that's where we run into the overeating, the binging. And you can also overeat when you're eating all these little snacks, these little small meals over the course of a day. You actually can end up consuming more calories than if you just eat a really nice, balanced, large breakfast, large lunch, large dinner. Or honestly, I see it with my clients. Some people just kind of have natural preferences throughout the day, where you might be someone who, yes, you want to have a nourishing breakfast, but maybe that breakfast is 350, 400 calories, and then you prefer to eat a larger 600, 700, 800 calorie lunch, and same for dinner. So it's all about figuring out what works for you, but at least 2 of those meals should really be filling and make you think to yourself, I don't even want to think about food for a few hours. Whereas when you're eating these small little, you're like a rabbit, kind of just snacking all day on your lettuce type of eating, you're always thinking about food. You're obsessing about food. You're wondering when your next meal is going to be, which also takes up space in your brain. And I will tell you, my anxiety dropped, my food anxiety. I specifically had food anxiety, obsession, orthorexia, constantly thinking about my next meal. Was it going to be healthy enough? Was it going to follow the rules of the diet that I was following? And it alleviates all of this because, I'm just going to eat this meal that is balanced. I've got my protein, I've got my whole grain carbs, I've got lots of veggies, maybe I'm eating fruit, and just approaching it that way. Now, I want to be clear, I'm not telling you to eat 1,000-calorie breakfast, 1,000-calorie lunch, and 1,000-calorie dinner, unless, of course, you do need 3,000 calories per day, which some people do. But instead, just being thoughtful in starting with making shifts in your eating habits. And if you already have foods that you like, that are really high quality, nourishing foods, but maybe you're not eating very much of them, or you're spreading them throughout the day and you're hungry all the time, then start playing around with it. You don't necessarily have to track, but if say you're eating lunch and you're just putting this very small amount of chicken on your salad, start adding in more chicken or add in more veggies to the salad and start bulking up your meals with these lower calorie, higher volume foods like lettuce and more veggies. I love having a mixed veggie salad where I've got tomatoes and carrots and cucumber and onion and peppers and just all kinds of things in there, which make it very interesting and very enjoyable. You can even mix up the type of protein that you have in your foods, for lunch. Like you could have the chicken, then you could have some hard-boiled egg in there, maybe have some cottage cheese in there. You could have just a tuna sandwich on whole grain bread. That's what I had on Saturday. I had some nice soup that I had made. It was one of those soups where I just sort of cleaned out the fridge and the pantry. It had all kinds of stuff in there. It had carrots and onions and celery and tomatoes and quinoa and pasta and beans. And it was just all these different things. And I just knew eating the soup is giving my body so many things that my body needs. And it was really filling. And I had it with a tuna sandwich, and it was so filling I couldn't even finish it all the way. And also being okay with, if you're full and satisfied, don't feel like you need to clean your plate all the time. I feel like the old way, when I was stuck in diet mode, I was like licking that plate clean all the time because I was just hungry all the time. And day-to-day life should not look like that. So I really encourage you to start shifting and eating 3 larger meals per day, especially if you're someone that finds yourself reaching for the candy jar, reaching for the chips, and wanting to snack all the time. It just means that your meals are not satisfying you. Okay, number 3, we've already alluded to this, so we're just kind of building onto each concept here. But my third way to improve your nutrition without tracking, and this is something that I love to talk about with my clients, because in the beginning, you're learning how to track, you're learning how to build your habits, and there's this very steep learning curve. And I do want you to do that with foods that are familiar to you. I don't want to overcomplicate things for you, but then you can get to a point where you're ready to level up. And this is one way you can do it, and that is focusing on more nourishing foods. And over the past decade or so, we've heard this buzzword called superfoods. And you might look at various lists, the 8 best superfoods or the 20 best superfoods. And the word superfood doesn't really mean much. All that word is conveying is that there are these foods that pack a punch when it comes to the micronutrients that they provide. And generally speaking, they're lower calorie, or they're providing nutrients that are not really found in a large amount of foods specifically. So if we're talking about beans, maybe black beans give you a hefty dose of magnesium, and you're not finding magnesium in a ton of other foods at the amount that the black beans give you. So let's just review. I'm sure if you're someone that's been interested in nutrition, you have some idea. I'm talking about things like greens, kale, chard, things like mushrooms. Mushrooms have so many amazing healthy benefits. Salmon, you've got the healthy fats that salmon gives you. Berries they pack a punch of multitude of vitamins and fiber. Things like nuts, but nuts, you do have to be careful because those are very calorie dense, but they do have so many benefits, especially nuts like walnuts, which is something that I try to eat on a regular basis. I have just a bag of mixed nuts that I keep in my fridge, and I'll just grab a few of them here and there. Foods like whole grains, the difference between, again, having toast that's white bread versus whole grain bread. And I can be picky about these foods too. I've probably said it on here a bunch of times, I cannot bring myself to eat whole wheat pasta. I think it tastes like cardboard. I'm never going to eat that. But I do like the Protein Plus pasta. I love quinoa. I love all types of rice. I even like brown rice. I like white rice. And white rice and brown rice. Brown rice isn't necessarily healthier than white rice. Both provide plenty of nutrients. I think there can be some controversy about that, always thinking that brown rice is better for you, but I do prefer white rice, so I tend to eat more white rice, but I do enjoy brown rice. things like avocado instead of butter. So one really easy way to improve the quality of your breakfast might be to have a couple hard-boiled eggs, have some whole grain, high fiber toast with avocado on it instead of butter, because the avocado is giving you healthy fats and it's also giving you fiber. And then you could have a little protein shake or cottage cheese or yogurt to amp up the protein on there. So swapping out certain foods in your day where maybe you're having butter and cream cheese, maybe you're having potato chips, maybe you're having cookies and things like that, and just asking yourself, where can I make some swaps? Again, I'm not telling you you can't have the cookies or you can't have the chips, but if you're having chips and cookies and butter and fried foods, all those things add up. And what I like to do is just ask myself, what is worth it to me? What do I really enjoy so much that I absolutely really want to have that food in my life? And for me, as I've said, it's usually ice cream. I have a little ice cream thing almost every night, but some nights I don't want it. I went to go get, my husband always has a popsicle every night, and I always have my little ice cream treat. And I went to go get them the other night, and I just brought him back his popsicle. He said, "Oh, you're not having your ice cream?" I said, "I don't want it tonight." I said, "I'm actually really full from dinner." And when you're full and satisfied, then you're less likely to want those types of foods as well, because if you're just not hungry, you're not going to want to eat as much. So by improving the quality of your food and eating these more nourishing foods, perhaps making a kale salad or making stir fry. And if you haven't eaten a mushroom in a long time, why don't you start throwing some mushrooms in there when you are making, even if you're just making spaghetti for dinner, why not have a side of broccoli with it or kale salad? And just start improving the foods that you're eating by thinking to yourself, what are these superfoods? And I'm just using that word because I feel like you understand what I'm saying when I use that word. But how can I add more superfoods into my diet? Can I add edamame to my stir fry? Can, like I said, switch out the bread? Can I make sure that I'm having an apple instead of a granola bar? That apple is going to keep you full and satisfied a lot longer than a granola bar will, and it probably has less calories. And looking to get your calories from more whole foods versus processed foods can also be a really great way to not be hungry and not overeat. So if you look at the foods that you commonly eat, and I always think it's interesting when people say, like, "Oh, I don't like veggies," or "I don't like fruits," or "I don't like whole grains," and that's like a really boring way of eating. I have to say that after looking at the food logs of, probably 100 people at this point, a lot of people eat the same thing over and over. So what does boring mean to you? The truth is, those foods, whole grain bread and eating fruits and veggies, those are foods that humans have consumed and enjoyed and found nourishing for, millennia. So what is boring about that? What might need to shift is your taste buds. And you just might need to say, if you want to add more broccoli into your life, dip it in some ranch dressing or put some Parmesan cheese on it, and find ways to consume these more nutrient-dense foods in a way that's enjoyable. Because I think sometimes we can think, oh, kale salad, gross. That just sounds like gritty and it's not going to taste very good. Well, put some salad dressing on it. I love kale salad with a lemon maple salad dressing. I put, lemon juice, some maple syrup, some Dijon mustard, some olive oil, salt, pepper, and garlic, and then it's absolutely delicious. But if I was just to eat kale salad with lemon juice and olive oil, that wouldn't sound good to me either. So don't be afraid to add things that are going to add flavor and make these foods more enjoyable for you, and have fun with it. If it's been a really long time since you've tried a certain fruit or a certain vegetable, maybe challenge yourself to make an eggplant dish, or try a dragon fruit or something like that, and kind of have fun with it and see what sticks, see what works, see what you like. But if you don't want to track your food and you don't want to get as involved with actively trying to eat more balanced meals, then simply changing the quality of the foods that you're eating can be really beneficial to your overall health and help you feel better about the foods that you're eating. And, if you just from a completely objective manner look at, what does my typical breakfast look like? What does my typical lunch look like? Like, are you even skipping meals? I know a lot of you out there skip meals. Can I start just creating more consistency and balance and quality in the foods that I'm eating? And maybe you'll get to a point where you realize you do want to track your food. But until then, just prioritize your protein. Try to start eating 3 filling meals and stop being afraid of eating a big meal. And start eating more nourishing foods, more high quality foods, more nutrient dense foods, and just start improving the quality of your meals overall. And you might just be surprised how much better you feel and how that can build your confidence and start shifting your identity. If right now you don't think of yourself as someone who's healthy and takes care of themselves, well, this is a way where you can start shifting and identifying as someone who, yeah, I am someone that enjoys kale salad. I am someone who has whole grain toast instead of a bagel with cream cheese. And you can start making that shift, because the cool thing is a lot of these foods that are nutrient dense are also really high in volume and fill you up more than the more processed foods, the more refined foods, and the foods that don't have as many nutrients in them. And over time, you might even see a shift on the scale. I'm not guaranteeing it, because again, you do most likely need to track your food if you want to actively lose weight, but this can be a really good stepping stone into those changes that you want to see in your life. So I'll just review: prioritize protein, start eating 3 filling meals a day, and start improving the overall quality and nourishment of the food choices that you're making. So I hope that you find this helpful. I hope you have a great week. And always remember, you can reach out with the message and I will see your message. If you do want a response, make sure that you give me your email address, because there's no way for me to respond directly back to you through the podcast app that you're using. All right, have a good one, and I will see you back here next week. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode of the Feel Your Best Formula podcast. If you enjoyed the information and discussion we had here today, then make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. If you're serious about making changes with your nutrition and fitness, then you definitely want to join my weekly newsletter list as well. You can find the link below and more information in the episode details. That's all for today, and we will see you back here next week for a new episode of the Feel Your Best Formula podcast.